and welcome to 30 Things to Store, where each day in this video series we are giving you tips on how to store things you commonly use. And today is day 27, and we're going to talk about clothing, but this time the clothing that you own but are not currently wearing. There are a lot of reasons why we may not be wearing some of the clothing we own. And we need to figure out where do we want to keep those items because we're not touching them every day, but we're not ready to get rid of them. And so let's talk about those different categories. First, I want to remind you that your closet, your drawers, the spaces that you easily access should really only have the clothes you are wearing today. I'm not telling you to get rid of those other clothes. I'm just saying don't keep them in your closet. Don't keep them in your top drawer. That is your prime real estate, and I want that to be available to you for the clothes you're wearing. Okay, so that's what we're going to do with our closets. So how about these other clothes? What are these other kinds of clothes? Well, sometimes we have clothes that just aren't fitting us right now. Maybe we gained a little weight and they're a little too small. Maybe we lost a little weight and they're a little too big. Or maybe they are out of season clothes, right? Because we have limited space. Or maybe there's something like maternity clothes. We might need them again. We don't want to get rid of them, but they certainly don't need to be hanging in the clothing when I'm not expecting a baby, right? So these are clothes that we want to keep for a potential future use, and we're not going to keep them in the closet, so where do we put them? You can always do well with a plastic bin. If these are very expensive items or furs or things, they need special treatment. But generally speaking, a plastic bin is a great place to store clothes that you are hoping to get to at some point. You can get a long and flat one that will slide under your bed if that's the storage you have. If you have a basement or an attic, you can put them in those locations, the bigger bins, right? We always want to label them, maternity clothes or something like that. If you are space constrained, you can get those vacuum bags. They're kind of like giant Ziploc bags. You put the clothes in, and then a vacuum cleaner hose can suck the extra air out, compress the clothing. That can help save a few inches. Another tip, perhaps for the out-of-season clothes, is you could keep it in suitcases. If you have your suitcases stored in a eaves of a home or a closet, and they're mostly unused, you could use them to hold out-of-season clothes as well. So lots of different options. Just remember to label so you know what is where. Also, I would just, one word of caution, it's okay to keep a few things that might be too big or too small, but don't keep a whole wardrobe's worth. Just keep a few, right? We don't want to keep too much. There are some other reasons why we might keep some clothes. For example, if you have children and you may have clothes from one child that you'd like to pass down to the next child. Or maybe you have a baby and you've received gifts and they just are a little too big because the child hasn't grown into them yet. So if you have a large span of years between children, I again suggest those plastic bins labeled by size. 3 months, 6 months, 2T, that kind of a thing. If your children are close and maybe there's just going to be a 6-month, 1-year period between when this child's wearing the item and when this child is wearing the item, you can establish something I call the one size up container. And that is it could be anything. It could be a laundry basket, a plastic bin, a box that is either on the floor or in a shelf, maybe in the closet. And when an article of clothing, maybe this one grows out and this one's going to wear it next year, you can just put it in that bin. And then when this child starts to grow a little and they put on their pants and they're too tight or too short, you just say, oh, what do I have waiting in the one size up bin? So that's a little tip for children's clothing because they grow so fast. It can feel like a full-time job keeping track of these clothes, right? Another tip when you're handing down clothes, what I'd like to say is when it comes to shoes, it's okay to hand down some shoes, but I generally suggest you not hand down the sneakers, especially if they wear them every day. Those tend to conform to the shape of the foot and they might not transition well. Dress shoes are terrific, maybe cleats that they only wear for a month or two, but probably not the sneakers they wear every day. And the last category of clothes that I've noticed people tend to have that they don't wear are memorabilia clothing items. So that could be the dress you were wearing when you got engaged that you're probably never going to wear again, but it has sentimental value. Or maybe the sweater that your dad used to wear and he's now passed away and you just can't bear to let it go. It's okay to keep a few of those. There are other ways to maintain that memory, like through photographs, but if it's just a few items, it's okay to keep them. But just remember, don't keep them in your closet. Those are really memorabilia more than they are clothing, and so we want to store them with our memorabilia. And we're actually going to be talking about memorabilia in a couple of days, but basically we're going to pull it out of the wardrobe space and put it into a storage space. So, it's great to keep things that you might wear in the future. Just remember, don't keep them in your closet. That's all for today. Hope to see you tomorrow on 30 Things to Store.